Hello and good morning to everybody watching. This is a special interview for VIT today. With us, we have the Honorable Dr. Pranav Sen, who is India's first Chief Statistical Officer, former Principal Advisor to the Planning Commission, and the current Chairman of the Standing Committee on Economic Statistics. With us today, Dr. Pranav Sen will be discussing the feature for the month of June, the economic recuperation post the COVID crisis and during the COVID crisis. And with me interviewing is Vagisha Sharma and Sarthak Ghoshal for VIT today. Good morning, sir. It's really glad to have you on the show. Um, so to start things off, we wanted to take this interview in three segments, starting with a pseudo global view of how things are unfolding in the world, the how the economics of the world is changing due to the COVID crisis, slowly transition into our national economy, and what the government has done about it finally. So that'll be the transition of our interview, and those are the questions we'll be answering as we progress in the interview. So, starting with, do you sense a global shift in economic supremacy towards China as we recover from the crisis? Or do you see a sense of boycott towards China due to their hand in fueling the crisis that we're in today?
Well, I don't really see a boycott per se. Um, but what will almost certainly happen is, I think, a global recognition of the fact that too many countries are overly dependent upon China for various products which are really of national and strategic importance to a lot of countries. And India is certainly one of them. So what you should expect to see is both countries as well as multinationals um, looking for alternative supply sources so that the degree of dependence on China reduces. Because what COVID has done has, I think, uh, brought to light the dangers of excessive uh, dependence upon a single source. So I think you're going to see a massive amount of diversification, not necessarily relocation.
Sure, sir. So, the Indian government, in one of their solutions to recovering from the COVID crisis, has stated capturing the companies who would relocate from China due to the crisis that's happening. It's one of their main agendas that they're trying to focus on while recovering from this economy. Do you think it's a viable solution and a viable strategy focusing on foreign direct investment, seeing the state of our economy right now?
Uh, well, as I said, that if we are talking about companies relocating from China, all right, in a sense, we've already missed the bus. That process had happened earlier because of rising wage costs in China. In fact, very rapidly rising wage costs in China, and companies have been shifting their production bases. But we have not been able to cash in on that opportunity, and there is nothing that we have done subsequent to that, which gives me to believe that we will be able to capture more of it now. Um, so other countries, Vietnam is the most outstanding example, but other countries in Southeast Asia, so Cambodia has got, Thailand has got, Malaysia has got, Indonesia has got some, Bangladesh has got. So they have been capturing the movement out of China for labor cost reasons. But our opportunity is really in terms of what I talked about, which is not moving out, but diversifying supply sources, because we do have a much more diversified economy than most others, and there are very few products that we cannot produce if we get down to it.
Right, sir. So, the approach the government seems to be taking at a state level and a central level seems extremely contrary to what specialists have been suggesting um, in light of, let's say, states talking about liberalizing their labor laws in order to attract more investors. In light of the solution of foreign direct investment, do you see that being a factor that actually changes tilts things for India, or do you think it's a shot in the dark and probably not the right time for making such calls.
Well, yeah, in fact, I am totally against that this announcement that was made by actually three state governments only
Yes.
about relaxation of labor laws for a period of 3 years. Now, if you really think about investment, any investment of any substance, just the setup time is 3 to 4 years, which means that the guy starts setting it up today. By the time the project is ready to produce, the labor laws are back to where they were.
Yes, sir.
Right? It's no attraction at all. But the downside is that having relaxed the labor law, the existing companies may take this opportunity to lay off a large number of workers, they're permanent workers, who they are not being able to do. Now, what that does is you are going to get greater contractualization of industrial labor, right? So, to my mind, this is a huge negative step rather than a positive.
Fair enough, sir. Um,
So, moving on to the second point, from a national perspective, do you think this crisis will shift the principle on which the policy making is conducted, with the majority hinting to a protectionist economy?
Well, it's not very clear what the government will do and how it reacts to it. So far, the government has given no real indication of any shift in strategy. Okay,
Right.
so there's been a long list of announcements that the prime minister sort of talked. He didn't actually lay it out; it was laid out by the finance minister. So there's a long list of things. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that if you go through that list carefully, what you will find is all these reform measures that have been proposed in the past, and various governments in the past have tried to implement them. All right, there is nothing new there. The problem, of course, is that over the last now 30 years, since 1991, we're almost 30 years down, governments haven't been able to do it. Okay. Now there must be a reason why it isn't. I mean, the politics behind these reforms are, I think, pretty strong. And I don't know whether this government, will have the resolve to overcome those politics, right? So, you've had large reforms which have been proposed for the agricultural sector, there have been reforms proposed for the MSME sector. All of these are in terms of proposals, they're old hat. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope they can do it because this should have been done a long time ago. But I'm not holding my breath.
Right, sir. So the government's recent hint on moving towards a protectionist economy, as they quote, "Make in India" or "reduce imports" angle, would you like to comment on it?
Yes, I think it's a bad idea. Basically, uh, you know, we have experienced the problems with more closed economies. I mean, we had a completely closed economy in the 70s, and then in the
Right.
mid 80s, we started gradually opening up, and then in the 90s, it took off, and we could see the benefits. People of my generation remember what it was like. You guys have never experienced it, all right? Um, and I hope that you don't ever have to.
Thank you, sir. So, moving on to a very important sector the government has focused on clearly, the MSME sector, right? The government is banking on huge growth on the MSME sector by fueling a lot of money into it. How viable do you think this strategy is in sense that the MSME sectors may not be able to compete in a strong competing environment right now uh, due to the situation they may not be able to compete with the big MNCs. So do you think it's the right strategy to bank on the MSME sector, seeing how the situation is going on?
Well, I don't think we have a choice. And the government certainly doesn't have a choice, because the simple fact of the matter is that almost all the non-agricultural employment in India is created in the MSME sector. It is not created in the corporates. So for the
Right.
same value of output, the MSMEs will employ 3 to 4 times the number of people that a large company would. So if uh, employment is a concern, and it should be, then you have no choice but to actually give the MSME a leg up. The point is, I think we also make a strategic error in terms of the way we think. We always think of MSMEs as being sort of low technology, scratch kinds of activities. But remember, a lot of your MSMEs are extremely dynamic. If you look at let's, look at the high tech sectors, uh, like, for instance, your space program, or for that matter, practically any high tech sector. They're actually dominated by MSMEs, not by large corporates. The large corporates are very, very good for products which are high volume products, where high capital intensity and huge economies of scale operate. But in niche products, whether they are niche because of technology, or they are niche because of localized tastes and preferences, in niche products, the MSMEs will outcompete the corporates any day.
Sure, sir. So you spoke about how MSME all inherently employs more, and hence we're inherently dependent on the sector. But you've spoken previously in interviews about there being two crises: one, an economic crisis, and two, a humanitarian
Right.
crisis. Seeing as the migrant workers going back to their hometowns, back to the rural India, the so-called Bharat, as you quoted in an interview, I remember. Um, do you see that this strategy of using MSMEs to employ doesn't stand anymore due to the fact that the people who require this employment are heading towards they're going back home, and hence the employment doesn't reach them? Do you see there's a gap? Do you feel that there's a gap in the strategy that the government is trying to employ?
Well, let me put it to you in the following way. A lot of our attention has been directed towards the migrant workers simply because it is a huge visible tragedy. Here are people who are walking back home. There are people who are fighting to, and in fact, rioting to get onto the few trains that are being provided. And all of this makes for big news. It makes for great visuals. But if you really look at the numbers, the bulk of the unemployment continue to be where they were originally located. They are not migrating back. They're just unemployed where they were. And so I think for the near future, at least for the next year and a half, I don't see labor shortage per se as being a problem. What may be a problem is that in specific skill categories, you may have an issue if those skills are embedded in migrant labor who have gone back. But I don't think that's a generalized problem.
So, but even if you look at the labor that is currently present and active and willing to work per se, there is still a social stigma, that a sense of fear in the common man of what the virus brings with itself, right? Environment where you're scared to go to work or go to your office or go to your factory, just because of this fear of catching that coronavirus and the pandemic itself. Do you see that as a hindering element towards the employment and the labor market as well?
Look, if you look at the CMI data, it doesn't suggest so. See, what the CMI data showed was that from around the unemployment rate shot up from about 8% to 24%. during the period of lockdown. Within 2 weeks or 3 weeks since unlockdown one began, that has come down from 24% to 11.5%, which means that a hell of a lot of people have gone back to work.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think the fear of the disease, yes, it is there. But I think fear of starvation is a much stronger fear, because then it's not just about you, it's about your family as well.
Yes,
So I
fair
don't
enough.
think that's the
Um,
problem. The problem is
right.
really with the migrants. Because for the migrants, it's not just the fear of the disease. The migrants have a second fear, which is that the trauma that they have experienced has been so bad. I don't think a lot of them will want that trauma repeated ever again in their lives. That, I think, is the bigger hindrance. Had we been able to manage the migrant issue better, I think we, we would not have been in this shape. But I think the real problem is not the disease fear, but the fear of what will happen to us if another lockdown happens after we've gone back.
So, major cities like Chennai have already gone back to a lockdown, seeing as the
Right.
rise of cases
That's right.
once they unlocked, right?
That's right.
And and we all have recognized to a certain extent that the government did make a mistake when it came to the migrant workers and has failed to post correct that mistake as well.
Yes.
Do you see any steps that we can take at this point of time, seeing as that major cities are again going back into a lockdown phase
Yes.
and the country is not speaking up about these migrant workers? Do you what according to you should be the next step
No,
that the
no. You
government
see,
should be taking?
the steps that the government need to take are is a far expanded version of what they call the Garib Kalyan Yojana. I don't know if you remember the Garib Kalyan
Yes, sir.
Yojana, which is direct income transfers. Okay, that's
Yes,
what you need to do. You need to say, we'll look after you. We understand the nature of your problem. We'll look after you with sufficient support. Now, giving 500 rupees is a joke. For a
sir.
family of five, 500 rupees lasts for less than a week. It
Hmm.
lasts for about 3 to 4 days, right? We should be
Right,
talking
sir.
somewhere in the region of 3, 4,000 rupees.
So, picking up on that point, I in an interview before, I think for The Wire, you spoke about how this 500 rupees is not reaching the right people, or or not reaching the right amount is not reaching the right people. And there is very little data on migrant workers currently for our government to assess and figure out how much money has to be given to whom. So how do you suppose that we take up this challenge of figuring out who should be given how much money? And we have
Well,
a system of
I don't worry about that very much.
right, sir.
And the reason I don't is that even if you have lockdowns, further lockdowns, I mean, those will be urban. It will essentially be in the larger cities. Right? I don't see rural India getting locked down again. Right? So
Right.
the focus uh, should be on how do we revive the rural economy as a whole. All right.
Right, sir.
Now, in that case, what is important is the amount of demand creation in rural India.
Mhm.
So the question of whether the right person is getting it or the wrong person is getting it in terms of the macroeconomics is frankly irrelevant.
Fair enough.
What
Yeah.
is relevant is the amount of money that's going there, and it is going into the rural area. If that money goes into the cities or it goes abroad, that's of course a different thing. But if the money goes into rural areas, even if it is taken entirely by the sarpanch and not given to the people who really need it, at least it will help regenerate the rural economy. That's how
Fair
a
enough.
macroeconomist looks at the problem.
Yeah, so the lack of demand in a consumption-based economy as India is extremely hurtful in this situation. what extent has the government's economic policies reflected this change of creating demand, which is extremely important, as highlighted by multiple economists, uh, in solving the current pandemic and solving the current economic crisis caused by the pandemic?
The government has done very little. The total demand stimulus in the system is only about 1% of GDP. It's about 2.1 lakh crores. That's bad enough. That's too small. The overall impact on incomes of the lockdown period, which is the 9-week period, is about 20 lakh crores. Right now, if you're giving 2 lakh crore, you're doing you're addressing only 10% of the problem. So that amount has to be much, much larger. Okay? There is no indication the government is doing that. If anything, the government is going in the opposite direction. That is, it is actually cutting back on budgeted expenditure.
Hmm.
So it has, it has stopped the dearness allowance to government workers. It has instructed ministries that no new projects will be launched. So whatever was budgeted in the February budget, that's being cut. So the net demand support that the government is giving is actually very, very small.
So the government is trying to take a path of reducing their fiscal deficit at this point of time and trying to reduce their expenditure, saying that that is a better strategy to take up. And the projections, we'll get into the numbers in the next question, but the projections are, according to the government, relatively positive in the coming 1 year. But little research tells us that that is just a short term, it's just a short term happiness, it's just a short term positive projection. In the longer run, such steps are going to be extremely harmful to the economy, let's say in a 2, 3, or a 4 year time period. Could you comment on how this steps are going to affect us in the longer run? The the strategy to reduce fiscal deficit from the government's perspective.
See, the point is that once a country has taken such a large hit on incomes, and okay, it's over a short period, it's over maybe a 3-month period at most. Um, but the effects of that last for a long time. In economics, there's a concept called the multiplier, which means that if I lose my income today, so I have lost income, because of that, I consume less, which means that the person who's producing the product I was buying gets less income, who then consumes less, and so on down the chain. Now, this chain can be long and it can be large. It can last about 1.5 years. So, unless my personal calculations are that if the government doesn't do something now to scale, not small little bits and pieces, but to scale, what we are looking at is certainly a negative growth this year, but we're looking at a negative growth next year as well. So it's a negative on a negative. It is only in the third year that the growth starts moving into positive territory, but it will take time for us to recover the overall damage that would have already happened.
Sure, sir. So, following up on that, right? The decision, as you said, the decision to stop all new projects and certain ongoing projects from the as instructed to all the ministries. How do you see that hindering the process of recovering from the economy? That basically hints towards the
Very
fact that the
seriously,
government is
very
not
seriously,
spending. Yes, sir. Can you give
very
us a little
seriously.
more analysis or a little more comment a
Yes,
little bit on that?
before anything comes into the budget, right? Uh, Government ministries have to do a fair amount of homework. So there is a long project preparations phase where they actually build up the details of the project, the costing of the project. And that's when they propose it to the government. If it is accepted, it gets included in the budget. Now, if you put them on hold, all that homework is wasted. Then if you suddenly want to restart again, you may have to start doing the homework all over again, which means you're going to lose another 6 odd months just doing the processes and procedures that you require for budget approval. So you're losing time. That's the main danger.
Fair, sir. So this is our last question in this segment of questions that we're asking. Um, so, uh, multiple economists, including you, and um, have quoted the solution to this problem is for the government to spend more money and not
Yeah,
worry about their deficit. Can you
yeah.
explain to us how this why that is so important for government to spend more money at this point of time and not worry about their deficit, in the sense that to our viewers who don't have that good an understanding about how these financials and economics work, why is it so important for the government to spend and increase the cash flow in the economy right now?
You see, the choice that faces the government in terms of its budget is that you try to improve your fiscal deficit, and what you will get is a large negative growth in the current year, right? In which case, what will happen is government's tax collections will go down, right? Which actually will increase the fiscal deficit quite substantially. So, just to give you an instance of how this is going to work out, the government will has now, even if I take it at an optimistic level, will be spending about 2 lakh crores, right? If that's all they spend, then their tax loss will be about 3.1 lakh crores, which means the fiscal deficit is going to be higher by 0.5% of GDP just because of the tax loss. Okay?
Right, sir.
Second, second is your GDP is going to go down. Remember, the fiscal deficit is a ratio between the fiscal deficit and GDP. So if the numerator stays where it is and the denominator goes down, then that ratio is going to go up.
Hmm.
So in any case, they're facing a situation where the fiscal deficit is going to go up, right? But if that's what they do, the cost to the economy in terms of people's income, people's welfare, employment is going to be hugely negative. Supposing, on the other hand, the government says, I will spend more, then you will still probably get negative growth. I don't think we can avoid it, but that negative growth will be much less.
Hmm.
So a large chunk of the additional expenditure that the government makes will be recovered from higher tax collection and a higher GDP. All right. So this is not a linear relationship. Unfortunately, the government tends to think of it that if I spend more, fiscal deficit will go up. Wrong. If you don't spend more, the fiscal deficit will go up. Take it from me.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. So moving on to the next topic. SBI estimated an economic downfall of around 6.8%, and according to your projection, we face a downfall of around 12.5% and 32% of the sector, which is twice the figure estimated by SBI.
Yeah.
So could you comment on the disparity and hence give us an insight?
Yes, I think there are two factors. One factor is what and how you play out the multiplier. As I said, it's the multiplier which builds up the damage over the course of the next year and a half. So we may have differences there. The second is that I have also built in the impact of the global economy. Now, earlier the IMF was saying that the global economy would shrink by 3%. Then they said 3.5%. Now they're talking about minus 5%. So if that happens, there is no way our exports are going to be insulated from that. And what you should expect to see is over the course of the year, your exports going down, right? Now, when export goes down, remember exports are a part of your demand. That's going to
Yes.
put an additional uh, slowdown component to the economy.
Right, sir. So in an interview to The Print, you spoke about the effect of demonetization and its difference in impact between India and Bharat, and also how our country is in a slowing economy but not exactly a recession. So, keeping that in mind, do you think that we're going to be in a long and hard recession in the coming years due to the current circumstances?
Well, let me be very blunt about it, is if the government doesn't step up with a much larger fiscal package, we are not looking at a recession, we're looking at a depression. All right?
Right,
Is
sir.
that bad enough for you?
In conclusion, the final question of our interview, seeing as we're college, we're all college students, and most of our readers and viewers are all from college university. So, how do you see this crippling economy being a major facet in our life, in the sense that we're all going into a extremely jobless economy right now, and most of us are sitting for placements this semester. How do you see this affecting our regular decisions and our daily lives?
Couple of things. One is, all my sympathies are with you guys. Um, the job market is going to be very difficult, and particularly those of you who are in a graduating batch, uh, placements are going to be virtually impossible as things stand today. So it is a very depressing thought, and I'm sorry. I'm very sorry for you for that. But going forward, uh, things may not be as bad, right? Simply because what is going to happen almost certainly is that you're going to see companies across the board, the ones which survive, a lot of them won't survive, right? But the ones that do survive are going to be upgrading technology. And so the market demand for skilled people is going to go up, and it's going to go up fairly sharply. But that's not going to happen until the economy recovers. And as I said, if the government uh, does the right thing today, that will be next year. If the government doesn't, then you'll be talking about 3 years down the line where you'll have a hard time getting jobs.
Right, sir. So in conclusion, what would your recommendations be to the government and specifically the government in light of the steps that they have taken that we discussed in the first phase of our interview of trying to um, trying to implement policies that were not implementable in the past, as we discussed, trying to relax labor laws, introduce more foreign direct investment, focus on reducing import. What would your recommendation and final remarks on this be?
Well, as far as reducing imports are concerned, there are two ways you can do it. One is by increasing tariffs. The other is by improving the productive efficiency of our own production systems. Hmm? My fear is that they will do the former. The problem with that, of course, and that should come as bad news to you, that if they provide protection, the urge and desire to upgrade technology among the companies is going to go down. They don't have to be that efficient because they're under no threat. All right. Um,
So,
Almost all the other proposals, reform proposals that the government has laid out are good proposals. right? So I think all of you should be sitting and praying to whoever you pray to, that it gets done. But my fear is that most of them will not, because the politics will play out.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having a conversation with you, and we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you doing this for us, interviewing for us. We hope we can talk to you soon on probably a better, on a more positive note in the future. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.